Oh, there she is. Oh, hi.
Hello.
Hi. And hopefully technology will cooperate this time. So we're going to just take it a little bit back to the beginning and we're going to get some information from Karina as to, herself, her work, what it is that she do and stuff like that. So I want to say to those watching, hi Danielle, hi Linnell, welcome to this awesome show. So, Karina, highly sensitive persons, intimacy coach. I mean, this is like an avenue, an area of coaching that I'm not very familiar with. I mean, I'd been told that I was a highly sensitive person, but
Favorite?
I didn't know there was coaching out there for it and stuff. So this is really exciting, at least for me. So, Chef, introduce yourself, give us some more background about you, how you got into this, and then let's dive right in.
All right, great. Sounds good. So, about 5 years ago, I started my coaching practice, and I realized as I was getting to know myself, right, because we can't grow a business, we can't really help others if we're not looking at our own stuff. So, as I started peeling back the layers about who I am, I realized that I had a lot of shame around being called sensitive. I knew I was sensitive, but growing up, my dad, he's from Greece, very like stubborn head, very hard headed. He would say being sensitive, the connotation of that it was a bad thing. So
Yeah,
he's like, oh, you're so sensitive. And it was just like this label of like bad on my
yeah.
forehead. So as a kid, growing up, being a teenager in college, I worked so hard to like not be so sensitive and just be a lot tougher. And in the process, I realized that I was really like hiding in a really important part of myself, that the part of myself that allowed me to connect to my emotions, allowed me to connect to my intuition, and to really understand people on a deeper level. So I was just putting up all these masks and all these walls. So
Yeah.
as I started to take down those masks and off those, down those walls, I realized that I'm a highly sensitive person, and it just made so much sense that these are the people I need to work with, because this is pretty common for a lot of us. So
Yeah.
as I started to do my work, I realized that to me, everything is about relationship. So we're in relationship with everything, with ourself, with other people, even with our
Mhm.
space, with God, the universe, with our health, our body, all of that, our work, our money.
That's right.
So for
That's
me,
right.
everything to me is about relationship, and so I primarily start with people, focusing on their relationship with others, because that seems to be
Mhm.
the biggest area of challenge. And so recently I've really been looking at, who are the people that I've served the most in the last couple of years, and it's been like not couples, but like women in committed relationships who really want to make it
Mhm.
work. They just don't know how to make it work. So that is where I've been taking my work recently, to really help highly sensitive women, who feel like
Mhm.
there's a lot of doubt if the relationship will stay
Mhm.
together. And I believe, like, I'm with my husband now for 10 years. We even were together for 8 years before we got married, and that was all through our 20s. And I feel like
Well,
in society these days, I feel like it's very common that people are like, oh, well, we're not compatible, so let's just break up. And,
yeah.
and oftentimes our best partner is our opposite. And so
Mm.
oftentimes it looks like we're not
Yeah.
compatible, but we're so compatible because it's like the yin to the
Yeah.
yang. Like he has strengths I
Yeah.
don't
A
have, and vice
balance.
versa.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So, but people get scared about that. They think that they have to be with someone that's just like them. But then you realize
Mhm.
actually that person is in many ways just like them. So it's very
Exactly.
paradoxical.
Exactly. And you are saying so many things that resonated with me. As I was saying earlier, when I was told that I was a highly sensitive person, I wasn't sure if I should be offended because I remember, like you growing up, it's like, why are you always crying? Why, why do you have to get so emotional? Why do things bother you? So now it's only been a few years since I was told that and I did the test, but I never explored it. So when you told me that was your niche, I was like, that's a niche?
Mm.
So I think it's actually spectacular. So what exactly, we're talking about highly sensitive person. What does it really mean to be a highly sensitive person?
Yeah, great question. So For those of you who haven't yet taken the highly sensitive person test, if you think you might be highly sensitive, I recommend going to Elaine Aron's website. It's hsperson.com, and she has different self-tests. So she has the main highly sensitive person self-test. She also has one for children, and then the third one is for people who are high sensation seekers, which I am a high sensation seeker. I love to travel, I take risks, all this stuff. So I didn't think I was sensitive because I had this other component to me. And because I tend to be a little bit more on the extroverted side at times when I'm around the right people, of course. But yeah, so just know that there's a whole spectrum of a highly sensitive person. Like there's not even one type. So not all highly sensitive people cry all the time, right? I know my husband, he's highly sensitive, but he's a male version. So he can tend to be more analytical about things. So take the self-assessment as a place to start. But let's talk about Elaine Aron. So she's done a lot of research on the trait. She's not the first person. Carl Jung used to talked about it in his work a long, long time ago, but she's really taken the reins on it since the 90s. So she actually created a way to understand it, and it's does. So let's go through does. Let's go through what that means as it relates to highly sensitive people. So D is depth of processing. So highly sensitive people think deeper. We tend to think outside the box. We tend to just see the world in a different way, and we don't understand why people can't see the way we see it. Right?
No,
You're
right.
like, can't you see this? It's like, and you're like, what?
It's so obvious.
It's like seeing life in colors, and everyone else sees black and white, and we're the ones who are crazy, right?
So they say.
Yeah, right? So anyway, so depth of processing, just like thinking deeper, thinking outside the box. And really, that can make us more passionate about things, especially things that are like really going on in the world that aren't good, because something can happen and then we think about it for hours and days and months, but like other people could just like, oh, it come in and then it go out, and they just continue with their day. So that's the first piece. The next piece of being highly sensitive is overstimulation. So because our five senses are more finely tuned, we tend to get overstimulated more easily, especially with all the technology we have and constantly on the go these days. So really learning how to slow down and come back to yourself, take care of yourself. This is so, so important for highly sensitive people. And then there's E, which is emotional responsiveness. It also means high empathy. So highly sensitive people, because our five senses are more actively on and turned on, then what I call it activates our sixth sense of intuition. So we're able to kind of tune into how people feel, and if there's a vibe in the room, we're able to pick up on it before anyone else. So that, emotional responsiveness, and we can cry more for sure. Like things bother us more because we have that emotional trigger that comes up. Yeah. And then the last piece with this is S, which is subtleties to details. So highly sensitive people tend to pick up on more details that other people might not. We notice things that people miss. We see little things that are missing. And so here's the thing about relationships, if we could start going into that. So if you have a partner who's very good at seeing what's missing in the relationship, and then that's all it's focused on, then I'm sure right? It's like the minute you just focus on the little things that are just missing or not right,
that could become problematic.
It just gets so big. Yeah, for sure. And then you forget all the amazing things about the relationship.
That's right.
And your partner.
Okay. Before we continue, I want to make sure that those who are joining as we go along get caught up. Guys, we're talking about highly sensitive persons, and I don't know if you're identifying yourself in any other descriptions that Karina has just laid out for us. She talked about the acronym DONS, which is depth of processing. Highly sensitive people got a way of really thinking, really getting in there, and stuff like that, and being overstimulated easily. You all the technology, you need a break, you get really, like, for example, I tend to have to push. The first time I got a smartphone, I wanted to throw it against the wall like 2 minutes later, because it's like you signed up for WhatsApp and then people just think you should be there all the time. And I could not deal with that. Or sometimes I live in perpetual silence at home. I do not play music. The television really goes on because I feel the world is noisy. So,
Yeah.
highly sensitive people, if you're identifying with any of this, you know, this overstimulation where sometimes you really just need to retreat because it's all kind of getting to you. And the high responsiveness, lots of empathy. Anybody else out there takes a break from the news because it's so negative, so depressing at times? There are times I just need to take a break. So that's also another trait that you've got that she mentioned, and the subtle details. And that's where were at, because this gets interesting. If you're highly sensitive and you pick at the things that are not right in your relationship, Katrina, tell us about this phenomenon because I don't
Yeah.
see anything good.
Yes, right? So, you know, we are very good at noticing when something is off or not right, and but like doing this too much is just gonna create a lot of tension in the relationship and a lot of conflict. And actually, there is a few patterns that I do see with highly sensitive people. So like when we're triggered, right? We don't realize that sometimes we don't realize we're triggered, but like something triggers us, but we don't have that awareness to be like, I'm being triggered right now. And so we automatically think that because someone did something or said something to us, then because we feel a certain way, it's because it's their fault that we're feeling that way. And so, so like then we feel powerless because we're like, they did this to me, right? So it creates that very victim mindset where it's like, well, my partner is mean to me, or my partner is abusive, or, you know, sometimes they are, but sometimes we really just take things in so deeply. So so just knowing that you don't have to be powerless to situations like that. Just know that if you're being triggered by something or someone, you can change the way you see the situation. Oftentimes people say things not to hurt us, but because that's just the way they're flowing. And so it's how we're wired, and that's depending on if we're going to get triggered or not. So by looking at your triggers, and then, you know, learning how to really shift, like, well, what am I feeling? What am I believing about this? Then you'll see that there's so much that can transform in the relationship.
Okay, so let me get this straight. You're saying that sometimes in the relationship, the highly sensitive person, it's not that the other person intended to hurt them, but you keep feeling that way, and so there's all this kind of resentment that you're building
Yeah.
because could that be because you do not even know that, one, you're a highly sensitive person, or two, that what your triggers may be?
Yeah.
Is
You
that a
don't know
possibility?
for sure. Yeah. I feel like the more powerless you feel in your relationship, I would say that's when you need to develop your awareness. And, you know, I'm not saying that like if you have an abusive even friend or family member or
Oh,
partner,
yeah, that's
like, you
different.
know,
Yeah.
that's like you
Yeah.
end and you're goodbye, right? But like if you're in this relationship and you're committed and you know that there's love there, but there's just miscommunication, misfires, this is where you start to look at, you know, how can I see this differently? How can I maybe reinterpret this differently? So for example, when I first started my business, my husband, he's very analytical, right? So, and me, I'm just like, I just go with the flow. I'm like, I just jump in and I figure it out, right? But he's like methodical plan. And so when I first started, he was saying like, oh, well, how are you going to do that? How are you going to get clients? How are you going to have this or that or whatever? How are you going to make money? And I'm like, I'm just like, I'm going to figure it out, you know? And he's like, and then, so I felt
I
like
know,
he was
right?
criticizing me, right? But he
Yeah.
wasn't. He was actually asking me important questions that I hadn't yet asked myself. And
Yeah.
so, but like to realize that was like I needed to think deeply. I needed to like know that like he's not trying to hurt me, and it's not that he doesn't support me. He's just wanting to
Yeah.
understand more about, you know,
Of
what
what
I'm
it is.
doing.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. And he
Yeah.
wants me to succeed. So he's asking me these really hard questions. And so, but because I didn't answer it myself yet, I get triggered.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, you don't
Yeah.
support
Oh
me, you're
my God.
criticizing me.
I swear you're just describing me to a T. Over the years, I've had to learn to reassess. And sometimes I still get triggered because sometimes, depending on how much is going on,
Right.
it's like someone says something, and all of a sudden I'm like, what are you trying to say? That I somehow, you know, and you go off on your own when they probably meant nothing like that. So sometimes, like you said, sometimes it's that, yeah, people are being mean, and sometimes it's us, and we need to learn to recognize the difference. That is so awesome right there. I think there are a lot more highly sensitive persons out there than we are even aware of. But I could see that this could create, like we said, some doubt, some distrust, and being overprotective. How would that hamper an individual's interaction with their significant other and the quality of the relationship on a whole?
Yeah. So, when you're triggered, when you're hurting,
Hmm.
it's a natural reaction to want to retreat and to hide and to like pick yourself up, right? You're
Hmm.
not going to really stay in the arena if you're already like slashed and bleeding. Like you're going to go back into the back to fix yourself up to like feel it get stronger again and then go back out. And so doing this, it's like a very natural reaction, but doing
Yeah.
this over time, it creates distance in the relationship. And and then especially if you go back out and then you don't share how you were feeling about the situation, if you're not able to be seen and be vulnerable with your partner, then it's going to keep
Hmm.
happening, right? It's like it's going to keep happening over and over, and then eventually you're just going to get burned out, like wondering, how can I protect myself in this relationship? We think we need to protect ourselves, and we do, right? Like I said before, it's like needing to know your triggers, but also telling your partner like the way you said that it didn't work for me, right? So I've learned also how to tell my partner like, okay, I'm going to change, I'm going to look at how I'm feeling about this and my trigger, but also this is how I work, and teach your partner how to be with you, because they don't know, they don't even know how to be with themselves. So this is now where I talk about being a leader in your relationship. So
Okay.
if you're the aware one, so being highly sensitive,
Hmm.
you're more aware. So you have the opportunity to step up as a leader and to lead with your awareness and share like, this is how I operate, teaching them, and this is how I want you to respond to me. Can we experiment with that? Can we play a game, right? Like not like being
Hmm.
controlling, but like, hey, can we try this out for next time, so that I'm not getting triggered, and also you're not being misunderstood when you're saying something to me.
Oh my gosh, I am even learning even more now, for my own context, because in relationship, you're hitting on some repeating themes and topics that we see coming up for for the importance of relationship. You're talking about being able to retreat for a little bit, but to assess yourself.
Mm.
Before we even get there, if I could just ask, for persons who might be identifying with what you're describing, how do they always have to first take a test? Because you might have a whole set of persons who don't even know that a test exists, which we're grateful for that link that
Mm-hmm.
you provided actually. um how do is it because you're saying that on the spectrum you can be very emotional or you can be a risk taker? Are there like certain key factors that might clue just the regular Joe in that you may be a highly sensitive person and the need to therefore take stock?
Mm-hmm. So even just to go back to some of the things we were saying before, just like, do you get overstimulated? Do you feel deeply about things? Do you get triggered? Do people tell you, when I was in college, my friend, like I would say something and then my friends would be like, they would look at each other and be like, what? But they call those Karina-isms because, I was 10 steps down the line thinking about something and they were just still in that conversation. So I would say like those are just the things to look out for. Do things really hurt you a lot more than it seems to hurt someone else? Yeah.
I get, so we have people continuously joining. Let's just do a quick recap before we get into some of the what communication that's required, the reflection, etc. We're talking about highly sensitive persons, and that just doesn't mean, oh, I cry a lot. It's persons who are highly, yes, you can be highly emotional, but like Karina said, you could also be a risk taker. You're very in tune to your emotions, your feeling, things impact you, and people might tell you a lot of the times that why you overreacting, why you always so affected, you really take on stuff, and things like that. So sometimes you just want to be able to retreat. You get overstimulated as well. You want to retreat from the world, from all the noise, from technology, etc. If that sounds anything like you at all, in the description there's a link. You will want to go and do the test to see if you're a highly sensitive person. The great thing about these tests is that it's just you, and you can be honest with yourself as you go along. And as we heard Karina mention, she said sometimes the way that your high sensitivity impacts your relationship is that sometimes you might overreact to something that is said, take it in the wrong context, think that it was meant to hurt you, but it wasn't. And now we are not talking about people who are mean, nasty, and abusive. When you're in a relationship that is mean, nasty, or abusive, you need to address that. And I am always one for, you need to protect yourself as much as possible. But we're talking about, you've got a wonderful relationship, but in the moment your spouse says something and it triggers you, and he did not or she did not mean to hurt you. You just find yourself, so you find yourself wanting to protect yourself from your spouse. She also mentioned about the retreat that you do sometimes. And the problem with the retreat is that you do not afterwards come out and communicate about that. And that is where we are at. So we are dealing highly sensitive persons in relationship. It's not that you're not compatible. It's not that you all can't get along. It's that you just need to find your method. Is that right, Karina?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and the more you know yourself, the more you can teach others how to be with you, right? But even if like acceptance, if you really feel like you want other people to accept you or understand you, those are two big things. You need to first understand and accept yourself, and they're just going to naturally reflect that. So that's another, really, really, really big piece of wisdom that I learned, that I was expecting everyone else to understand me before I understood myself, and that's just not the way it works.
Oh, that is true. Yeah, it's always, but you don't understand me. And half the time you've not stopped. You don't even know why you're offended sometimes. You just think it's like, I'm offended. You said something mean. And if you really rethink, so you got to really, a lot of the times we really do not take time to assess ourselves. How important is it to take that moment to step back, to retreat and analyze?
Yeah, I would say so, so important. And that's why self-care is important, and alone time. So even people who are highly sensitive and they're also high sensation seeker, even the high sensation seekers need a lot of alone time to process and to kind of filter and to assess and to, self-inquiry and ask yourself the deeper questions. And that's why we have to slow down. We have to not be constantly binge watching TV or videos on social media, not binging with eating or drinking or smoking. There's so many ways that we can hide from our feelings and our emotions. And to me, addiction in general, we could be addicted to anything. We could be addicted to love. Having other people just like chase after us and just be in that game. That's another thing that I found in the relationships that I've worked with. But like really the addictions are just you have a fear of your feelings, right? You have a fear of being seen with yourself. And so the more you try to run from that emotion, that feeling, the more you're going to hide. And it's like how, Brene Brown, she's a researcher on shame and vulnerability. And she talks a lot about like you cannot experience connection without vulnerability. So
I agree.
Right?
I agree.
So it's like,
yeah.
But if you're too scared to be vulnerable, it's like no wonder why you're not feeling satisfied, or you're not connected to the meaning in your life or the relationship, and there's a disconnect.
That's right. And that's such an important point that you just made. I think too many times we're really afraid of vulnerability. We're afraid of, letting the other person see. And how do they really love you? What aspect of you are they loving or interacting with if it's not truly who you are? And if you don't know who you are, then who is it that you're showing to them?
Right.
So I have learned, as a highly sensitive person, I have learned over the years, and it doesn't always work. Don't get me wrong. I'm still learning to really, in a moment, try to step back and ask. And I learned this from a friend of mine. She's a psychologist. What is it I'm hearing this. Is that what you are
Mm,
saying? That
mm,
is one of the ways I think. But it also it also brings us to the point you made, communication. We keep hearing how important that is in relationship, and we think it just means to talk. So people will talk about the dog and the cat and the trees and the wind, but ask them after 5 years of being married if you were ever able to share your deepest fears or deepest secrets with the person you're with. And a lot of people kind of go like,
right.
that,
Yeah.
you know? But you're saying for a highly sensitive person, if you're aware, it is important to communicate, correct?
Yeah, for sure. And be willing to share something that you're really feeling. And the interesting thing is that when we our mind, our ego tells us that if we're vulnerable, we're unsafe. But the
Mm-hmm.
opposite is true, that when we're vulnerable, we can experience connection, and therefore
That's
connection
right.
is like right there next to safety. So it's like the mind does that to keep us in
Mm-hmm.
this like self-sabotaging space, where we're just like, the mind is in control, the ego is in control. And the ego, we need our ego, we need a healthy ego. But to have the ego in control all the time, to have that, like, those voices in the head like saying that like you're not good enough, or
Mm-hmm.
constantly doubting and questioning, and just making you very confused and overwhelmed, all of that, it's just not going to serve you. And learning to listen to that inner voice, right? I don't
Mm-hmm.
I feel like for me, like, as I got older, I was like, I need to have this inner voice, and I know it talks to me, and I know it
Mm-hmm.
comes through me, but discerning what the inner voice is versus the ego voice, and
Yeah.
to know the difference between the two, because that inner voice is like a deep knowing. It's like it's your inner guidance, and that's what you listen to.
All right, and guys, there we are having it with Karina. This has really been quite insightful, as a matter of fact, and it is the truth. There is the need to know the difference. Inner voice, ego. We can get them confused so easily, you
Mm-hmm.
know. But wow, you've just kind of, in a very concise way, thrown a whole lot out there to think about. I think that one of the awesome things about what Karina is saying here is that it gives you all this little insight to go and assess yourself, to see if you fall in the highly sensitive category, because it has this major impact on your relationship. Sometimes you think you're being abused, or sometimes you think persons are being mean. And sometimes when we think people are being mean, it's just us. We know when we are being abused. Trust. Let me pause on that, because I was about to say
Yeah.
we know, but somehow it takes a while. And that's talking for a person who came from an abusive situation.
Yeah.
It takes a while to really understand that what this person's intention is to hurt me. And that's the difference between abuse and being in a highly sensitive, kind of situation. Abuse, the intention is to hurt you. Highly sensitive is they said something, but you took it as a mean statement, and you got to know the difference and stuff. So, Karina, you have given us quite a mouthful there in that little short space of time. Is there anything else that you would like to add?
um I just want to say thank you. I love talking about relationships in general and educating people on what it means to be highly sensitive, so thank you for letting me come on in here and do that with you. um if someone is highly sensitive, like, you can reach out to me. I also have a Facebook group. It's called A Place for Highly Sensitive People. So I can leave a link for that if you guys want to learn more about what it means to be highly sensitive and learn some tools in your relationships. I'll see you over there. Other than that, this has been great.
All right, we want to say thank you to Karina for joining us. And there you have it. The group online, a group for highly sensitive person. It pays to know if the difference, is my spouse really being mean, or am I a highly sensitive person? Do I need to do the assessment? There's a link for the assessment in the description. Karina will leave her link for her group, so you can find some more support there for highly sensitive persons, and how to maneuver your relationship. It's not always that the world is out to get you. And how do you handle all these deep feelings that you are having about stuff? It is really, really good to tap into yourself, to become aware. You do no harm in becoming aware. But don't just get information, apply it. So go to the link, take the quiz, take the test, and you know, and make sure that you tap into who you are, where you are at. Before you run off, I see someone make a comment that this can border on a psychological disorder. Um, I'm not a
Yeah.
psychologist, but I can definitely
So
see. What do you say to that?
yeah, so if anyone else has questions, I could, you put them in the comment. We can maybe do some question Q&A. But
Mhm.
um, being highly sensitive is not a diagnosis. It's not a mental disorder. It's a genetic trait. It's a different way of experiencing the world. So that's really important to know. But because you are highly sensitive and because you think about things and you feel things deeply, highly sensitive people could experience more anxiety than not someone who's not, or depression, or something else, or another. ADHD is another diagnosis often with being highly sensitive. So you can be highly sensitive and have anxiety or and depression or and bipolar, but this is not a psychological diagnosis, and it's nothing, in regards to your mental health. It's really about how your body is functioning, and how you're operating as a whole.
Okay,
But
so
really good
that clears that
question.
up.
Yeah.
Yes, that was a perfect question, Vakisha. Thank you, and thanks for joining in. Ladies and gentlemen, we are so happy that you guys took the time to come on here. This is a big topic. This is just basically scratching the surface to give you some information so that you can go take the test, see if you are, and then do some more research. And there's a support group for you to join to, become more aware. Wow, the spin-offs from this topic. I'm sorry, my head is just going a little bit crazy because I'm starting to think, oh my goodness, I need to bring some more people in to talk about this kind of stuff because it is the truth. It is so true that there's a lot going on with us, but we have been conditioned. We have been so conditioned to kind of ignore a lot of it. It's like don't focus so much on yourself. I mean, you hear that a lot. You mustn't think so much about yourself and your feelings. Think about the other person. So we learn not to assess, to tune into what we are feeling and thinking. And as a highly sensitive person, we need to, because the rest of the world gonna think we're stark raving bonkers, based on our reaction. Matter of fact, I've been labeled crazy more times in my life than I'd like to even mention, but there is something really enlightening, and there's a freedom when you realize I'm not crazy. I just see the world differently. I feel the world differently. So, Karina, you have introduced a valuable topic, into this group, and I'm really hoping that persons will go do the assessment in the link. The link is in the introduction, guys, or even join your group so that they can get more awareness. Like I said, I'm no superhero. I don't specialize in everything, but I want people to be healed. So, if she's the expert, you want to make sure that you connect if you think that you're feeling overwhelmed. So to recap and end this, we were talking about the highly sensitive person in relationship, persons who are overwhelmed by noise and sensations and technology and usually need to retreat and take a break, persons who are highly empathic. You sometimes you can't even look at the news too long because, well, it's overwhelming and you weep a lot. And as she mentioned, not all highly sensitive persons are cry persons. She said her husband is, and he's highly analytical. You get offended a little bit easily sometimes, when people say things and you're not quite sure of the context. But she mentioned how you should take the leadership role in your relationship. You need to be the person who's aware. So you first got to tune into you. When you're reacting in a certain way, you want to take a moment back to assess and analyze, is it the person or is it me? Am I overreacting to this? Did they really mean to hurt me? Is it something that's triggering me? Got to learn to recognize your triggers. I think I got a list yay long of some of what my triggers are, but it pays to know. When you know what your triggers are, you don't just keep it to yourself. You want to get to your person, that your significant other, your friends, your families, the people who are important to you. You want to sit them down and say, yes, okay, I reacted this way because I interpreted it this way, but is that what you meant? So that is what, some of the highlights. You want to make sure that you catch this video, review it a few times so that you don't miss the significant details. And know that as a highly sensitive person, you've got your space in this world. You might be a little bit different. People might think you're outside the box, but ain't got no box for the highly sensitive person. You're just awesomely unique. Thank you for joining us. Post your questions, please, and Karina will make sure that she address each and every one of them. Karina, thank you again for joining us.
Thank you
Ladies
so
and
much.
gentlemen,
Bye.